Learn to act as if nothing bothers you, not because nothing hurts, because you have decided that your inner world will no longer be controlled by outer noise. Life will test you constantly. People will misunderstand you, disrespect you, doubt you, and project their own struggles onto you. Situations will unfold that feel unfair, uncomfortable, and unexpected. None of this can be prevented. What can be trained is your response. Most people suffer not from what happens, from how deeply they react to it. A single word can ruin an entire day. A small setback can become a heavy burden carried for weeks. This happens because the mind immediately attaches meaning, identity, and emotion to events. Acting as if nothing bothers you means refusing to give unnecessary meaning to temporary moments. It means understanding that not every stimulus deserves a reaction. This discipline does not mean becoming cold or emotionless. You will still feel anger, disappointment, sadness, and frustration. The difference is that you no longer allow these emotions to dictate your behavior. You observe them instead of obeying them. You let them pass without turning them into actions you later regret. This is not suppression, this is mastery. When someone tries to provoke you and you remain calm, you break a powerful cycle. The other person expects a reaction. They expect you to defend, explain, or explode. Your silence and composure deny them that control. In that moment, you are no longer being led. You are standing on your own ground. This is strength, not weakness. Acting unbothered is also an act of self-respect. It signals that your peace is valuable and not easily disturbed. You stop explaining yourself to those who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop fighting battles that offer no growth. You stop wasting energy on opinions that do not build your life. You become selective with your attention, and this selectiveness brings clarity. The mind often exaggerates threats. It turns small problems into large ones and temporary discomfort into lasting suffering. When you act as if nothing bothers you, you interrupt this habit. You remind yourself that most things will pass, that not everything requires urgency, and that calm thinking produces better outcomes than emotional reaction. You create space between what happens and how you respond. This approach requires discipline. It requires awareness in moments of intensity. It requires the ability to pause, breathe, and observe rather than react. Each time you succeed even slightly, confidence grows. You begin to trust yourself. You realize that you can face discomfort without collapsing. You learn that peace is not fragile, it is resilient when trained. People may misunderstand your calm. They may think you do not care. In reality, you care deeply, but you choose to care wisely. You invest emotion where it matters and withdraw it where it is wasted. You stop letting every external event enter your inner space. This boundary protects your energy and sharpens your focus. Over time, acting as if nothing bothers you changes how life feels. Challenges remain, but they lose their power to shake you. Criticism becomes information rather than an attack. Failure becomes feedback rather than a judgment. Conflict becomes something to navigate, not something that defines you. You move through life with steady presence instead of constant tension. This way of being is not about pretending. It is about training. Training the mind to stay grounded. Training the breath to slow under pressure. Training the body to remain relaxed when tension arises. Training awareness to stay present instead of being dragged into unnecessary mental battles. When you master this, people notice. Not because you are loud or dominant, but because you are stable. Your calm becomes a quiet authority. Your presence becomes reassuring. You are no longer reactive, and because of that, you are no longer easily controlled. Learn to act as if nothing bothers you, not to escape life, to meet it with clarity, not to avoid emotion, but to rise above impulsive reaction, not to appear strong, but to become strong. When you stop allowing the world to disturb your inner balance, you reclaim your power, your focus, and your peace. Most of the pain we experience does not come from what actually happens to us, but from the story we tell ourselves about what happens. An event occurs neutral in nature, and within seconds the mind begins to interpret, judge, exaggerate, and replay it. This mental activity often creates far more suffering than the event itself ever could. A single comment can echo in the mind for days. A small failure can be magnified into a personal identity, and a moment of discomfort can be stretched into endless inner conflict. The body may experience a brief reaction, but the mind keeps the wound alive long after reality has moved on. The mind has a habit of traveling through time. It revisits the past, replaying mistakes, conversations, and regrets as if repetition could change them. It also rushes into the future, imagining worst-case scenarios that may never occur. In doing so, pulls you away from the present moment, the only place where life actually exists. While the body is sitting safely in a room, the mind may be fighting battles that are not real, arguing with people who are not present, and fearing outcomes that have not happened. The suffering feels real because the nervous system responds as if the threat were immediate, even though it is entirely imagined. This is why two people can experience the same situation and suffer in completely different ways. One may see a challenge, the other a catastrophe. One may feel discomfort and move forward. The other may carry the weight for years. The difference is not the event, the interpretation. The mind adds meaning, identity, and permanence to temporary experiences. It says, should not have happened. This means something is wrong with me, or this will never get better. These thoughts feel convincing. They are assumptions, not facts. Suffering increases when resistance appears. When the mind insists that reality should be different from what it is, tension is created. Anger arises when expectations are not met. Anxiety grows when control is lost. Sadness deepens when attachment refuses to let go. Reality simply unfolds, but the mind argues with it, and that argument becomes pain. The moment you stop fighting what already exists, a large portion of suffering dissolves. Acceptance does not mean approval. It means recognizing what is present without adding unnecessary conflict. Another source of mental suffering is identification. The mind does not just experience thoughts and emotions, it claims them. Thought becomes my thought. An emotion becomes who I am. Temporary feelings are turned into fixed identities. Fear becomes I am weak. Experiencing failure becomes I am a failure. This fusion between experience and identity traps a person in endless self-judgment. When thoughts are observed rather than owned, they lose their authority. They come and go like weather, no longer defining the sky. Silence reveals this truth. In moments of stillness, when attention returns to breath or bodily sensation, it becomes clear that thoughts arise on their own and disappear without effort. They do not require belief to exist, and they do not require action to pass. The more awareness you bring to the present moment, the less power the mind has to drag you into imagined suffering. What remains is often simpler than expected: sensation, movement, and breath, none of which are unbearable. Mental suffering thrives on unconsciousness. When reactions happen automatically, the mind runs unchecked. Awareness interrupts this cycle. The moment you notice a thought rather than becoming it, space is created. In that space, choice returns. You may still feel discomfort, but it no longer multiplies into unnecessary pain. Reality becomes lighter, not because life has changed, but because the mind has stopped turning every experience into a personal battle. The desire for control is one of the strongest forces driving human behavior, yet it is also one of the greatest sources of frustration. People often look outward, believing that if circumstances improve, if others behave differently, or if life becomes more predictable, peace will follow. This belief creates a constant struggle with the external world, which by nature is unstable and beyond complete command. Weather changes, people act according to their own understanding, and events unfold without asking for permission. When control is sought outside, disappointment becomes inevitable because the world does not bend itself to individual expectations. True control begins when attention shifts inward. The only place where influence is consistent and reliable is within one's own responses, choices, and interpretations. You cannot dictate what happens, but you can decide how you meet what happens. This distinction is subtle yet powerful. External events may be loud, unfair, or unexpected. The inner reaction determines whether those events dominate your mental and emotional state. When this is understood, energy stops being wasted on resistance and blame and is instead invested in clarity and self-discipline. The mind often confuses control with force. It believes that controlling life means manipulating outcomes or suppressing emotions. In reality, inner control is closer to alignment than domination. It is the ability to remain steady under pressure, to act with intention rather than impulse, and to observe emotions without being ruled by them. Anger may arise, but it does not need to become aggression. Fear may appear, but it does not have to turn into paralysis. Inner control allows emotions to exist without allowing them to dictate behavior. Most people lose control not because situations are overwhelming, but because awareness disappears in moments of intensity. A trigger appears, the mind reacts automatically, and words or actions follow before reflection has a chance to intervene. Later regret sets in, accompanied by the realization that things could have been handled differently. This cycle repeats until one learns to slow down the internal process. Control is regained the moment you create space between stimulus and response. In that space, you are no longer a slave to habit. Inner mastery requires training. Just as the body strengthens through repeated practice, the mind becomes stable through consistent discipline. Attention must be exercised not occasionally, but daily. Observing the breath, noticing bodily sensations, and becoming aware of thoughts as they arise are simple practices, yet they build immense inner resilience. They teach the mind to stay present rather than scatter itself across past regrets and future worries. Presence is the foundation of control, because you cannot guide what you are not aware of. Another illusion of control lies in trying to change others. Much frustration is born from the expectation that people should think, feel, or behave in a certain way. When they do not, disappointment or anger follows. Recognizing that each person acts according to their own conditioning and understanding frees you from this burden. You may set boundaries, communicate clearly, or walk away, but you do not need to carry the emotional weight of trying to control what was never yours to command. This realization returns power to where it belongs. Inner control also means responsibility. When you stop blaming circumstances for your inner state, you reclaim ownership of your life. This does not mean denying hardship or pretending that everything is easy. It means acknowledging that while pain may be unavoidable, suffering is often amplified by resistance and unconscious reaction. Responsibility shifts the focus from "Why is this happening to me?" to "How will I respond to what is happening?" This shift transforms obstacles into training grounds rather than threats. Ego resists this idea because it prefers to feel justified rather than peaceful. It would rather be right than free. It insists on reacting, defending, and proving itself. Inner control requires humility, the willingness to let go of unnecessary battles and to accept that not everything needs a response. Silence becomes an expression of strength. Restraint becomes a sign of maturity. When you no longer need to react to every provocation, others lose their power over you. Control within also extends to discipline in daily actions. The way you speak, the way you consume information, the way you move your body, and the way you rest all shape the mind. Scattered habits create a scattered inner world. Order in small things builds order in the mind. Waking with intention, training the body, limiting distractions, and speaking with care are not rigid rules, but tools for cultivating inner stability. Through discipline, the mind learns consistency, and consistency builds trust in oneself. Over time, inner control brings a quiet confidence, not the loud confidence that seeks validation, but the calm assurance that whatever arises can be handled with clarity. Life does not become perfectly smooth, but it becomes manageable. Challenges are met without panic, and success is received without attachment. You begin to move with life rather than against it. This does not make you passive, it makes you precise. Actions become deliberate instead of reactive. When control is recognized as an internal skill rather than an external achievement, pressure decreases. There is no longer a need to arrange the world perfectly in order to feel stable. Stability comes from familiarity with your own inner landscape. You know your triggers, your tendencies, and your strengths. You observe them without judgment and guide them with patience. In this way, control stops being a struggle and becomes a natural state of awareness, guiding each moment as it unfolds. Emotions arise naturally, without invitation, and leave in their own time. Yet many people treat them as permanent authorities rather than temporary experiences. A feeling appears and is immediately given a seat of power, allowed to influence decisions, speech, and behavior as if it were a command that must be obeyed. This misunderstanding creates unnecessary inner chaos. Emotions are responses, not rulers. Provide information about inner and outer conditions, but they are not instructions that demand action. From an early age, most individuals are conditioned to identify with what they feel. When happiness arises, it becomes, I am happy. When anger appears, it becomes, I am angry. This subtle shift from experiencing to identifying blurs the line between awareness and emotion. The moment an emotion is claimed as identity, it gains control. What was once a passing state turns into a personal truth, shaping perception and behavior. The mind begins to defend the emotion, justify it, and act from it, often without reflection. In reality, emotions behave more like weather than commands. They change with circumstances, thoughts, energy levels, and even breathing patterns. Anger can dissolve with rest, sadness can lift with movement, and fear can fade when attention shifts. Temporary nature is obvious when observed closely, yet when attention is absent, emotions appear solid and overwhelming. Awareness reveals that emotions rise, peak and fall on their own, even without interference. They do not need to be fought or fed, they need to be witnessed. Problems arise when resistance or indulgence replaces observation. Resisting an emotion creates tension, as the mind insists that the feeling should not be present. Indulging an emotion strengthens it, giving it more energy through repeated thought and expression. Both approaches keep the emotion in control. Observation, however, changes the relationship. When you notice an emotion without judgment, it begins to loosen its grip. You are no longer inside it, you are watching it. This shift alone weakens its authority. Emotions often feel urgent. Create a sense that something must be done immediately, that expression or reaction is necessary. This urgency is deceptive. It pushes behavior before understanding. Many regrets are born from actions taken in emotional haste. When space is created between feeling and action, clarity emerges. You may still choose to act. The action comes from awareness rather than impulse. This is the difference between being guided by emotion and being ruled by it. Fear, for example, is meant to signal potential danger, not to dominate life choices. When fear becomes a master, it limits growth and shrinks possibilities. Anger is meant to signal a boundary or unmet expectation, not to justify harm or aggression. Sadness is meant to signal loss or change, not to define identity. Each emotion has a function, but none deserve permanent control. When their message is received, their job is complete. The body plays a crucial role in emotional experience. Emotions are not only thoughts, they are physical sensations. Tightness in the chest, heat in the face, heaviness in the stomach. When attention stays in the mind, emotions spiral into stories. When attention moves to the body, emotions become sensations that can be felt without narrative. This embodiment grounds the experience, preventing mental escalation. Breathing slowly and deeply can regulate the nervous system, reducing the intensity of emotional waves without suppression. Silence is another powerful teacher. In silence, emotions reveal their impermanence. Without verbal expression or mental commentary, they rise and fall more quickly. Speaking excessively about emotions can sometimes reinforce them, turning temporary states into ongoing dramas. Silence does not mean denial, it means allowing space for natural resolution. Within silence, awareness grows stronger and emotions lose their need to dominate attention. Allowing emotions to visit without granting them authority requires trust in oneself. It requires the understanding that you are capable of feeling deeply without losing control. Many fear that if emotions are not expressed immediately, they will become overwhelming. In truth, the opposite is often the case. When emotions are allowed to pass without interference, they resolve more efficiently. Suppression traps energy, but observation releases it. This approach does not remove emotion from life, it brings balance. Joy is experienced fully without clinging. Pain is felt honestly without resistance. Anger is acknowledged without destruction. Emotional maturity is not the absence of emotion, the presence of awareness. You remain connected to your inner experience without being consumed by it. Over time, this relationship with emotion builds inner stability. Situations that once triggered intense reactions begin to lose their power. Not because you have become indifferent, but because you have become grounded. You recognize the familiar arrival of certain emotions and greet them without fear. You know they will leave, as they always have. This knowledge creates calm in the midst of intensity. When emotions are no longer masters, choice returns. You choose how to speak, how to act, how to move forward, regardless of what you feel. Feelings inform you, but they do not command you. Life becomes less reactive and more intentional. You stop being pulled in different directions by passing states and begin to move from a deeper center of awareness that remains steady as emotions come and go. In a world driven by constant noise, expression, and reaction, silence is often misunderstood. It is mistaken for weakness, avoidance, or a lack of confidence. Yet silence, when chosen consciously, is one of the strongest expressions of inner power. It reflects restraint, awareness, and control over impulse. Those who understand silence do not rush to fill every moment with words, running through the park, nor do they feel threatened by pauses. They know that not everything requires a response, and not every provocation deserves attention. Most conflict is fueled by unnecessary speech. Words spoken in haste, emotion, or ego often create damage that cannot be easily undone. Silence interrupts this cycle. It provides space between stimulus and response, allowing clarity to arise. When you remain silent in the face of provocation, you deny the other person the reaction they seek. This does not mean submission. It means you are no longer participating in a battle that leads nowhere. Silence becomes a boundary, protecting your inner state from external chaos. True silence is not empty. it is full of awareness. It is the pause in which observation replaces reaction. In silence, you notice tone, intention, and your own internal responses. This awareness sharpens perception. You begin to see situations as they are, not as emotions distort them. Words often carry personal bias, justification, and defensiveness. Silence strips these layers away, revealing truth more clearly than constant explanation ever could. Also, strength in the ability to listen. Silence allows others to reveal themselves fully. When you do not interrupt, argue, or defend, people speak more freely. In doing so, they often expose their motivations, insecurities, and intentions. Silent presence can be more commanding than loud authority. It signals confidence and self-assurance. Those who are secure do not need to prove themselves through constant speech. Silence also conserves energy. Speaking, arguing, and reacting consume mental and emotional resources. Many people exhaust themselves by engaging in every discussion, defending every opinion, and responding to every comment. Silence chooses efficiency. It directs energy inward rather than outward. This preserved energy strengthens focus, discipline, and resilience. Over time, this creates a calm presence that others naturally respect. Inner silence is just as important as outer silence. A quiet mouth with a noisy mind still experiences conflict. Cultivating inner silence means reducing unnecessary mental chatter. This is achieved through awareness of breath, posture, and sensation. When the mind is quiet, words become deliberate rather than compulsive. Speech gains weight because it is no longer scattered. Few words spoken with clarity are more powerful than many words spoken without intention. Silence is especially powerful in moments of emotion. When anger arises, words tend to escalate situations. Silence allows the emotional wave to pass without causing harm. This restraint requires strength because the urge to express or retaliate feels urgent. Yet, each time you choose silence over reaction, self-mastery grows. You learn that you can feel intensely without acting impulsively. This realization builds trust in yourself. Many fear silence because it exposes them to their own thoughts. Noise becomes a distraction from discomfort. Facing silence is necessary for growth. In silence, unresolved emotions, fears, and desires surface. Rather than avoiding them, silence invites observation. Through observation, understanding develops. Through understanding, resolution becomes possible. Silence becomes a mirror reflecting inner truth without distortion. Silence also communicates boundaries. When you stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding, you reclaim dignity. Not every opinion deserves your justification. Not every accusation requires defense. Silence in these moments is self-respect. It signals that your peace is not available for negotiation. This form of silence is firm, not passive. It is a conscious withdrawal from unnecessary conflict. In leadership and presence, silence creates gravity. A person who speaks rarely but meaningfully commands attention. Words carry intention because they are not diluted by excess. Silence before speaking allows alignment between thought, emotion, and action. This alignment is felt by others even before words are spoken. It creates trust and authority without force. Silence also deepens connection. When words are removed, attention sharpens. Eye contact, posture, and subtle expression become clearer. Shared silence can communicate understanding more deeply than conversation. It allows space for others to be as they are without interruption or judgment. In this space, genuine connection emerges. Choosing silence does not mean rejecting communication. It means choosing the right moment and the right words. It means understanding that strength lies not in constant expression, but in intentional expression. Silence teaches patience, humility, and self-awareness. It reveals that power is not always loud and confidence does not always announce itself. Through silence, One learns to stand firm without aggression, to observe without judgment, and to move through life with steady presence rather than constant reaction. Discipline is often misunderstood as restriction, punishment, or the removal of pleasure. Yet in reality, it is the very structure that allows inner freedom to exist. Without discipline, emotions dictate behavior, impulses control decisions, and life becomes a series of reactions rather than deliberate choices. Emotional freedom does not mean the absence of difficult feelings. It means the ability to experience them without being controlled by them. Discipline is what makes this possible. When discipline is absent, emotions run unchecked. A moment of anger becomes an outburst. A wave of fear becomes avoidance, and a feeling of sadness becomes stagnation. The individual may believe they are being authentic by expressing everything they feel, but in truth, they are surrendering control. Emotions are temporary states, yet without discipline, they gain permanence through repeated indulgence. What is felt in a moment begins to shape identity, habits, and long-term behavior. Discipline introduces order where chaos would otherwise dominate. It creates routines that stabilize the mind and body, reducing emotional volatility. Simple acts such as waking up at a consistent time, training the body, regulating sleep, and maintaining structure throughout the day directly influence emotional balance. The nervous system thrives on predictability. When the body feels stable, emotions become less extreme and more manageable. This stability is not accidental. It is built through repeated disciplined actions. One of the greatest sources of emotional suffering is the belief that feelings must always be acted upon. Discipline teaches restraint. It trains the individual to pause, observe, and choose rather than react. This pause is where freedom lies. In the space between emotion and action, awareness replaces impulse. You may feel anger, but you do not have to express it destructively. You may feel fear, but you do not have to retreat. You may feel desire, but you do not have to surrender to it. Discipline turns emotions into signals rather than commands. Mental discipline is just as important as physical discipline. The mind, if left untrained, constantly seeks stimulation, validation, and comfort. It avoids discomfort and exaggerates threats. Through disciplined attention, the mind learns to stay present rather than wander endlessly through imagined problems. Practices such as controlled breathing, focused attention, and stillness strengthen the ability to remain grounded even when emotions arise strongly. This grounding prevents emotional escalation before it takes over behavior. Emotional freedom also requires discipline in speech. Words spoken without control often reinforce emotional states rather than release them. Complaining strengthens dissatisfaction. Repeating negative stories deepens emotional attachment. Discipline in speech means choosing silence when words would inflame, choosing clarity when confusion arises, and choosing restraint when expression would cause harm. This does not suppress emotion. It refines its expression. Refined expression preserves dignity and reduces regret. Discipline also teaches delayed gratification, which is essential for emotional maturity. Immediate relief often leads to long-term instability. Avoiding discomfort, numbing emotions, or seeking constant pleasure weakens emotional resilience. Discipline trains the ability to sit with discomfort without escaping it. In doing so, confidence grows. You learn that emotions can be endured without collapsing. This endurance creates freedom because emotions lose their power to intimidate. Many people believe freedom means doing whatever they want whenever they want. In practice, this leads to dependence on mood and circumstance. Discipline reverses this dependency. You act according to principle rather than feeling. You move forward even when motivation is absent. Over time, this consistency builds self-trust. When you trust yourself, anxiety decreases. Emotional freedom emerges naturally from this trust. because you are no longer afraid of your own inner states. Discipline also protects against emotional exhaustion. Constant emotional engagement drains energy, responding to every message, reacting to every opinion. Internalizing every external event creates overload. Discipline sets boundaries. It limits unnecessary input and preserves mental clarity. With fewer emotional distractions, inner space expands. This space allows emotions to arise and pass without overwhelming the system. Paradox of discipline is that what initially feels restrictive eventually becomes liberating. The discipline of training the body leads to physical ease. The discipline of regulating habits leads to mental clarity. The discipline of emotional restraint leads to inner calm. Freedom is not found in the absence of structure, but in the mastery of it. Structure supports freedom by removing chaos. Over time, discipline reshapes identity. You no longer see yourself as someone at the mercy of emotions, circumstances, or other people. You recognize your capacity to remain steady. Steadiness does not make you cold or detached. It makes you reliable. You feel deeply, but you are not overwhelmed. You engage fully. You are not consumed. Emotional freedom becomes a byproduct of a disciplined life rather than a goal chased through avoidance or indulgence. Through discipline, emotions find their proper place. They inform, color, and enrich experience without dominating it. Move through awareness without leaving destruction behind. Life becomes less reactive and more intentional. You stop fearing your emotional world because you know it no longer controls you. You carry yourself with calm presence, not because emotions have disappeared, but because discipline has taught you how to hold them without losing yourself. Peace is often treated as a reward, something that arrives once life becomes easier, quieter, or more predictable. Many wait for external conditions to align before allowing themselves to feel calm. This approach keeps peace permanently out of reach. Because life rarely settles into lasting stability, true peace is not dependent on circumstances. It is a skill developed through daily practice, just like strength or endurance. Without training, the mind defaults to restlessness, worry, and reaction. With training, it learns steadiness. The untrained mind seeks stimulation and resists discomfort. It jumps from thought to thought, replaying the past and anticipating the future. This constant movement creates tension even in the absence of real problems. Peace does not come from eliminating thought, from changing the relationship with it. Training awareness teaches the mind to observe without chasing every impulse. The more this observation is practiced, the less the mind feels the need to react to everything it produces. Daily training begins with attention. Where attention goes, energy follows. When attention is scattered across endless inputs, peace fragments. When attention is gathered deliberately, peace strengthens. Simple practices such as focusing on the breath, feeling the body, or noticing surroundings anchor awareness in the present moment. These moments of presence, repeated consistently, condition the nervous system to settle rather than escalate. Peace also requires training in response. Situations arise that test patience, trigger emotion, and challenge expectations. Without training, reaction is automatic. Words are spoken without thought, judgments form instantly, and tension spreads. Training creates a pause. In that pause, choice appears. You may still respond firmly, but without inner disturbance. This ability is not accidental. It is built through repeated moments of restraint and reflection. Another aspect of training peace is discipline in consumption. What you take in mentally and emotionally shapes your inner state. Constant exposure to conflict, comparison, and negativity agitates the mind. Training peace means being selective. It means limiting unnecessary noise and choosing input that supports clarity. This discipline is not withdrawal from the world, but intentional engagement with it. The body plays a vital role in peacefulness. Physical tension and exhaustion directly affect the mind. Training the body through movement, stretching, and controlled breathing releases stored stress. A regulated body supports a regulated mind. When the breath is shallow and rushed, the mind mirrors that agitation. When the breath is deep and steady, the mind follows. Daily attention to the body is part of training peace, not separate from it. Peace also requires training in acceptance. Resistance creates friction. When reality does not match expectation, tension arises. Training acceptance does not mean passivity or resignation. It means recognizing what is present without adding unnecessary struggle. You can work to change circumstances while remaining internally calm. This balance is learned through experience, through noticing how much suffering comes from fighting what already exists. Inner dialogue is another training ground. The way you speak to yourself shapes your emotional landscape. Harsh self-judgment, constant comparison, and unrealistic demands disturb inner peace. Training peace involves noticing these patterns and gradually softening them. This does not mean indulging in comfort, but practicing honesty without cruelty. A calm inner voice supports a calm inner state. Consistency is more important than intensity. Occasional moments of calm do not rewire the mind. Daily, repeated practice does. Even a few minutes of stillness each day accumulate. Over time, the mind learns a new baseline. Calm becomes familiar rather than foreign. This familiarity allows peace to remain even when practice ends, carrying into daily activities. Peace is also trained through values. When actions align with principles, inner conflict decreases. Acting against one's values creates tension and regret. Training peace means clarifying what matters and living accordingly. This alignment simplifies decisions and reduces internal debate. When life is lived with integrity, the mind rests more easily. Setbacks are part of training. Moments of reactivity, impatience, or agitation will still occur. These moments are not failures, they are feedback. Training peace means returning again and again to awareness without judgment. Each return strengthens the skill. Progress is not measured by perfection, but by how quickly balance is restored after disruption. Over time, trained peace changes how challenges are experienced. Difficulties still arise, but they no longer feel overwhelming. The nervous system recovers faster. Perspective widens. You respond rather than react. Peace becomes less about controlling life and more about meeting it with steadiness. This steadiness is not fragile. It is built through repetition, discipline, and patience. Peace is not something you achieve once and keep forever without effort. Like any skill, it weakens without use. Daily training maintains it. Each breath observed, each reaction restrained. Each moment of awareness strengthens the foundation. Through this practice, peace becomes reliable not because life has become easy, but because you have become capable of meeting life without inner resistance.